So we continue with nervous system. We just studied about the complete nervous system, that was the peripheral nervous system and the central nervous system. Central nervous system consisting of the brain, that is the cerebrum, cerebellum and the medulla oblongata, and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system consisting of the first is the somatic nervous system, that is the cranial and the spinal nerves, and then the autonomic nervous system, which was the sympathetic and parasympathetic. Now we understand that how does a particular reflex takes place. Now what is the reflex? It is the to response to any kind of a stimulus. Okay, when we are having a response to any kind of stimulus, we are giving that thing. At that time, that particular process by which the response to stimulus takes place is a reflex of it. Like for example, if you touch a hot body, you withdraw your hand. So that particular is the reflex. So let's understand what is the reflex, and this is an involuntary action. Okay, reflex is involuntary action. So reflex is involuntary action. There are two types of action which occur in our body: voluntary, performed consciously, and involuntary, performed unconsciously. Examples: voluntary actions. You wish to watch your program on TV and you switch it on and press the remote for a particular channel. So yes, you take the remote, you change the channels, you switch it on, you increase the volume, you decrease the volume. So all this, what you are doing is a voluntary action. You pluck an apple and eat it. Yeah, you take an apple, pluck an apple from a tree and you eat it. So that is a voluntary action. You know the time, you raise your arm and look at the watch on your, I want to see the time, so I raise my hand and look at the watch. So that again a voluntary action. So this is a involuntary action. Whereas involuntary actions occurring unknowingly are called as reflexes. Reflex action. Reflex action is the automatic, quick, immediate, or all the three: automatic, quick, immediate, involuntary action in the body brought about by the stimulus. So when automatic, quick and immediate involuntary action is brought about in the body due to a stimulus, it is called as a reflex action. So let's see some examples of a reflex action. Some particle falls into your eye and there is an immediate flushing of the tears to wash out the particles, that is glandular secretion. When something enters into your eye, automatically the tears come out from the eye. Why is that so? It is a natural process of cleaning the eye. So the tears what are going to come out will be the natural process of cleaning the eye. So that is involuntary action. You cannot control at that time. You cannot control that thing. So it is involuntary. It is bound to happen. It is going to happen. Instantaneous withdrawal of the hand when we accidentally touch a hot iron. So suppose I touch a hot iron, then what will happen is if I touch it and I feel it hot, I just withdraw my hand. So why would I withdraw my hand? This is because of the involuntary action, that I know that this particular thing was hot. So immediately the hand is withdrawn by me. That's a muscular action, muscular movement. Shivering when it is too cold, muscular contraction, and sweating when too hot, glandular secretion. So you can see that whenever it is too hot, we are going to have some perspiration coming up, we are sweating. So that particular thing is controlled by the sweat glands. So sweat glands are the glandular function. So glandular secretion will be given out by the body so as to cool down the body. And similarly, if we are feeling cold, we'll start shivering. Shivering is a muscular action by which we are creating a heat in the body. So that's again an involuntary action. Deviation of the eye pupil to look in the dark and vice versa. So yeah, when you are going to look in the dark, automatically your eyes become bigger, and similarly when it is too sunny, then your eyes automatically become smaller. So that is the deviation in the constriction of the eye pupil in accordance to the light. Again, it's a muscular movement. Pushing along the swallowed food through the food canal, muscular movement. Again, the peristalsis, the movement of the food from the mouth downwards into the alimentary canal. Yeah, again it's pushing away. That is again a involuntary action in the food canal. Non-stop beating of the heart, muscular movement. So again, it is a movement which is a involuntary action. All involuntary actions or reflexes are initiated by some kind of sensory stimulation resulting in either a muscular action or a linear action. So whatever kind of a reflex, or we can say that whenever an involuntary action takes place or reflex takes place, at that time it is caused due to some basic stimulus. It will be caused only when that stimulus is acting upon the body. If there is no stimulus, there won't be any reflex. So that's why the muscular or glandular secretion is going to take place only when there is some kind of a sensory stimulation by a stimulus. So the difference between a reflex, that is involuntary action, and a voluntary action. In the reflex one, initiated by some stimulus, touch, pain, pressure, heat, light, etc. Whereas voluntary action initiated by the willing thought. I want to do it and that's why I'm doing it. So that's just the voluntary action. Reflexes mainly self-protective due to environment, and whereas voluntary is fulfilling a desired goal. So I wanted to do certain things, so I did it. So that's why it is a desired goal. Whereas involuntary, it's just normally a protective mechanism. कुछ लग गया तो हाथ हटा दिया, वो सब तो क्या protective mechanism है. It's much more protective against the environment. Commands originate mostly in the spinal cord and autonomic nervous system, and few in the brain as well. Whereas in case of voluntary action, it is only the brain, originates in the brain. So command for the withdrawal of the hand, the withdrawal of the eye closing, all these come from either the spinal cord or the brain. But in case of voluntary action, it has to come from the brain. It cannot come from the spinal cord. Reflexes involves muscles and glands, whereas voluntary actions involves only muscles, no glands. So we cannot force ourselves to cry. We cannot say that okay, I want to cry, I want to give my lacrimal glands, giving out the tears. No, it is not possible. You cannot do it by force also. So it is only the muscles which are in our control. The glands are not in our control. Okay. So that is about the differentiation between the reflex action and the voluntary action. Now let us understand about the different kinds of reflexes. So first of all, before that we learn to understand what is a stimulus. A stimulus is any agent or environmental change which initiates a response in the body. The stimulus can be of several types: physical, mechanical, that is touch, prick, pressure, etc., or chemical, radiant, like light, or thermal, like heat and cold, or electrical. So depending upon the kind of the stimulus, there will be, it could be either a mechanical stimulus or a heat stimulus or a light stimulus or a electrical stimulus. So depending upon the different kind, it will be different kind of stimulus. Let's talk about reflexes now. Reflexes are of two types: natural, inborn reflex, and conditional, acquired reflex. Natural, inborn means what? Nobody teaches you that particular reflexes. The reflexes are such that they are known to you right from birth. You are not taught about this thing. Like if you sneeze, can you sneeze with your eyes open? No, you cannot. Whenever you sneeze, automatically the eyes gets closed. Okay, it's automatic thing that the eyes definitely going to get closed. So if your eyes is getting closed, it was not somebody taught you that, oh, when you sneeze, then close your eyes. Otherwise this will happen or that will happen. No, it is just involuntarily inborn that it's a natural process that whenever you sneeze, your eyes are going to close. So that is called as a natural kind of a inborn or natural reflex. So reflex in which no previous experience or learning is required, these reflexes are inborn. So if you don't need to learn that thing, it is known to you right from birth, it is inbuilt in you right from birth, it's a default thing in you, then it is called as a inborn or natural reflex. Examples are blinking, coughing, sneezing. These are protective. Okay, blinking of the eye is, you can only control it slightly, but you cannot control it for a longer period of time. You'll have to blink later on. So that's why it's an inborn. You don't need to teach anybody to blink, right? Similarly, coughing, sneezing, these are a protective kind of a thing which is bound to happen, which is not to be learned by anybody. It is automatically known to us in nature, by nature. Salivation, swallowing, peristalsis provide functional efficiency. So salivation, saliva coming out in the mouth, or the food particles going downwards, that is swallowing or peristalsis of the food, that is natural. It is going to be inborn. Nobody needs to teach you that. So that is how it is called as a functional efficiency. Now we see the conditional or acquired reflexes. Conditional reflexes are one which develops during lifetime due to experience or learning. See, you won't come to know that the iron, a small baby doesn't come to know that an iron which is kept over there could be hot, and that's why touching it will be dangerous. But by chance he touches it once, then next time he will never touch it. Okay? He will always be very cautious while handling the iron because he has already burned it. So there, the previous experience of his said, yes, it could burn me or it could hurt me, automatically gives him the idea that it becomes a reflex. So then it is this reflex which he has learned in his life. Okay, so certain things are such that you learn in your life and then it becomes a kind of a reflex for you for lifetime. So reflex in which develops during lifetime due to experience or learning. For example, what you experience simply at the sight of or by a smell of a familiar tasty food resulting in watering the salivation of your mouth. This means that it is you have not eaten that food earlier. The response would not occur. Like the first time you saw a pizza, okay, did your mouth started watering? No, not at all. Okay, you may have said, "नहीं मुझे नहीं खाना है सब." But the moment you ate it the first time, what happens next? You cannot control yourself. You are needing more and more of that. So that particular thing, once you have had it, after that, when you even see it, your mouth starts watering. So why is that? That's a conditional reflex. Your body automatically sees the thing and feels like, oh wow, I just want to eat this. Okay, so that is how, because you had that previous experience of yours, by which you knew that, oh, that is very tasty, or you like that particular taste of that particular thing, then automatically it becomes a kind of a reflex. Salivation can occur as a natural reflex also. Saliva starts flowing down when you chew or eat food. But in the above example of salivation, the sight or smell of the food was enough for the response. There your brain actually remembered the taste of the food and worked in an unconscious way. Such conditional reflexes are not inborn and are thus also called acquired reflexes. So yeah, salivation hota hai, मुंह में salivation hota hai, that is very common. But when you see that food and salivation takes place, is because of a condition. It is because of that particular taste which you remember, or the smell which you remember, which you identified that, wow, this is pav bhaji going on. Okay, that is how it is going to be, that salivation came with. This is a conditioned reflex. It is a reflex which your body has conditioned itself to produce when it is having the sight or the smell of that particular food. So a conditioned reflex is an involuntary, spontaneous, automatic response brought about due to a previous learned experience. Okay, it is a response, it is a very much a reflex, but what kind of reflex? It is the one which is produced due to your previous experience towards that thing. So that is about a conditioned reflex. To understand the conditioned reflex, there is an experiment which was done on a dog. So in that experiment, what they did was that a dog was given a food. So first of all, the food was served to the dog. The dog ate the food. So that was very nice, tasty. And the next day what they did was, when they've got the food, they rang a bell. Okay, they rang a bell and then placed the food. So the dog could identify the food, at the same time he could hear the bell. And they continued doing this particular thing that for some days, that ring a bell and give the food, ring a bell, then give the food. It was seen that within few days, it so happened that you just ring the bell and the dog starts, mouth of the dog starts watering. Why? Because he is in the anticipation that bell bajana to abhi mujhe khana milega. So what happened? You had generated a kind of a acquired reflex in the dog that whenever the bell rings, the dog feels like having the food. Okay, so this is an experiment to show the conditioned reflexes. So let's see what is Pavlov's experiment on a dog. A classic example of developing a conditioned reflex is that of Pavlov's experiment on a dog. This famous Russian biologist noted that under normal conditions, no animal will secrete saliva in response to the ringing of the bell or to any other sound. So of course, no, if you just ring a bell to a dog, will he start salivating? No, of course not. He's never going to do that thing. Not on a dog, not a cat, not anybody. Nobody is going to start salivating with just the ring of the bell. But when a bell was repeatedly sounded simultaneously with the presentation of the food during an adequate period of training, the dog salivated at the sound of the bell even when there was no food at that time. So, because the dog started getting a habit of listening to the bell and getting the food, it became a kind of a reflex action for the particular dog, that whenever he rings the bell, he hears the bell, he feels that he's going to be given the food. In other words, but when the bell was repeatedly sounded simultaneously with the presentation of the food during an adequate period of training, the dog salivated at the sound of the bell even when there was no food at that time. In other words, a stimulus which previously had no relation with the organism's salivary response now elicites a response in that gland. So what is that? That food and the bell had no connection at all with each other, but now we generated this particular response that when the bell rings, the salivation is going to take place, which is not at all connected to each other. The bell is nowhere connected to the food, but because you had connected it continuously with that particular thing, that's why it has caused the salivation to the dog. So here the conditioned stimulus is the sound and not the sight of the food. Okay, the dog started salivating by the sound of the bell and not by seeing the food. If it is by seeing the food, it's okay, it's obvious. Any person, even any particular animal, is going to start salivating with the sight of the food. But salivating at the sound of a bell, that is something different. And so the reflex and the stimulus is the bell, and the reflex is the salivation. So you can see the things over here. In the point A, the food is there and the dog starts salivating. In B, the ringing the bell, but no food, and the dog doesn't saliva. In C part, he is ringing the bell with the food and with the presentation of food, and the dog starts salivating. And then after continue ringing the bell, not followed by the food, still the dog salivates by the sound of the bell. Similarly, the dog runs away. If a dog at a distance sees you simply kneeling down as if you are picking up a stone, the dog runs away. This is a very common observed conditioned reflex found in the dogs. See, the moment you see a dog and you say just ऐसा नीचे झुक के करने का है, तो he starts running away. Why? Because he is expecting that you will take out the stone, pick up a stone and throw it on him. So that's why you will find that is again a conditioned reflex on a dog, that as soon as your person is going to look at him in a particular manner and start to bend down to as if trying to pick up a stone, the dog starts running away. Wild animals in a circus are trained to do many strange acts. These are largely through conditioned reflexes. So in the circus you will find the dog jumping from a lion jumping from somewhere, an elephant walking somewhere, in a certain manner with one 2 feet and all. So that is all because of the conditioned thing what is being told to it. So when the drums are going to beat, at that time you do this thing, and then when he sees the fire, he is going to see something. So that is how they are going to train the animals accordingly in a circus. Now let's see some common examples or reflexes in the human. So common reflexes in human are, first one, natural or inborn reflexes mein knee jerk. Knee jerk is in which the leg is involuntarily extended as a result of a sharp tap below the kneecap in the relaxed leg rested on the other side leg while setting. So whenever somebody is putting his leg one above the other, and ये knee के ये नीचे के part पे अगर कोई एक थोड़ा मारेगा तो अपने आप ये पैर ऊपर जाएगा. Okay, so it was like this. The one leg is like this, other leg is upon it like this. Now this particular leg has the knee over here. Suppose this is the knee. So if I hit the lower part of the knee with a small, like a small duster or something also, it will just give a jerk. So that is called as a knee jerk. Okay, this is a natural inborn reflex. Quickly closing of the eyelids when an object suddenly approaches the eye or when the strong beam of light is flashed over it. अगर कोई light आता है तो तुरंत हम लोग आँख बंद कर देते हैं या तो हम लोग हाथ ऊपर करते हैं. Withdrawal of the hand or part of the body when suddenly pricked. So suddenly if I get a prick, I withdraw my hand. Peristaltic reflexes. Chime is propelled through the small intestine by passive waves. When the portion of the intestine becomes distended with the chime, the stretching of the intestinal walls become a stimulus, and its contraction pushes the food along. Is the response. So yeah, when the food goes from the stomach to the intestine, and when it goes into the intestine, जैसे ही उसका intestine becomes distended, and the chime is going to be there, and then it pushes the food forward. So that is again a reflex, which is an inborn reflex. Coughing reflex, when the food swallowed enters in the windpipe, suddenly you start coughing. Sneezing reflex is when irritant enters into the nose. So these are the inborn natural reflexes. Now the conditioned reflexes. Most of the daily habits are conditioned reflexes. Seeing the teacher entering the classroom, you stand up. Oh, I doubt. You tie your shoelace while talking and not knowing whether you had put the first putting the right lace over the left or vice versa. So when you habit of tying the lace, you don't even know that whether you took this one first and this one, or like this one, this or like this. You are just tying it up and while talking to somebody. So it is just a conditioned thing that you are habituated to tying it in such a way. Playing a musical instrument. So if you play an instrument well, you don't even know to see the where is sa and where is re and where is ga, and you can just be able to play it without any kind of a you don't need any kind of help, and you just don't even need to see, and you are able to, like typing also in the same way. Using keys of the keyboard while working on the computer, and giving a hand signal to your right automatically when you are turning your cycle or car to the right. So when you are turning to the right, you will always put a hand over here. So that is something which is being told to you. You are being constantly doing that thing, and automatically becomes a habit, and that becomes a kind of a reflex. And applying brakes in your vehicle or car or bicycle if someone suddenly comes in front of you. So of course, if someone comes in front of you, definitely first instance will be you are going to apply the brakes. So the brakes are going to be applied as soon as somebody is in front of you. So that is again a conditional reflex. Now you can better differentiate between the simple and an acquired reflex as follows. Natural or simple reflex, inborn, requires no previous experience. Conditioned reflex, developed by experience or learning. Natural, directly related to the stimulus, whereas conditioned, brought about by the condition, totally different from the different initial stimulus. So direct initial, so without the direct initial stimulus, that is like the bell, no connection with the food, but it gives you a stimulus. Similar to in all natural reflex is similar in all humans, or similar among all individuals, or in any one species. Yeah, it is similar. Natural response is common in all the human beings or all the animals, so different animals. So it is going to be common, whereas because it is not related to any learning experience, whereas it conditioned reflex differs in different individuals subject to learning and experience. The next one we see is a nervous pathway or reflex. Okay, the nervous pathway in a reflex. So how does the impulse passes from the sensory part to the spinal cord, and when it comes back to the motor part, and the withdrawal takes place. So that is what we are seeing in a reflex path or in reflex arc. So for the reflex arc, you can see on there's a figure in 10.10 which is giving you the reflex path. This is the reflex path. So this is the sensory part, the skin, or which is being pricked, and this gives rise to the sensation which is passing through the sensory neurons and going into the association neuron in the spinal cord, and then from there to the motor neuron where it is going to the effector muscle, and the muscle is going to withdraw the hand. So that is called as a reflex arc. A very, very important diagram. This diagram, this small one and this big one are very important for the labeling and also to understand the main principle of reflex arc. A reflex action must be quick to have value. Therefore, the pathway for receiving and sending information must be short. In a simple reflex, impulses are not conducted up and down the spinal cord but leaves at the same level at which they enter. This may involve 2 neurons or 3 neurons. When it involves 2 neurons, these are dorsal sensory neurons located in the dorsal root and ventral motor neuron located in the ventral root of the gray matter or the spinal cord and its fibers in the ventral root. So yeah, so there are the reflex arc can involve 2 neurons or it can involve 3 neurons. If it is 2 neurons, then it is the dorsal root has the sensory part and the ventral root has the motor part. The impulse from the sense receptor is received through the sensory afferent, meaning the carrying towards fibers of the dorsal root of the spinal nerve, and it reaches the motor neuron in the spinal cord. So let's consider that this is a pin and it pricks me over here. When it pricks me over here, so there is going to be this particular root which will be the dorsal root through which the sensory impulses are going to reach the spinal cord. So the sensory impulses are going to travel through the sensory neuron and go towards the spinal cord. In the spinal cord, wherever it reaches there, it is going to give the motor neuron impulse to the motor neuron from there itself. It is not going to go up and down the spinal cord. Okay, it did not have any kind of a information given to the brain or something. It directly gives you a reflex action. So the reflex action will be that it is going to the motor neuron and it reaches the motor neuron of the spinal cord. A response impulse is immediately flashed like a reflection through the same spinal nerve to the effector muscle or the organ to react. So yes, it will go there, it will immediately come back so that I can withdraw my hand and avoid the pricking to be taking place on my hand or stop the pricking which is taking place to my hand. Sometimes the third neuron called intermediate or connecting or association neuron or relay neuron is included in the reflex arc lying between the sensory fiber and the motor neuron inside the spinal cord. So sometimes inside the spinal cord there is one more association neuron which will be there, which is connecting the sensory neuron and the motor neuron. So if that is there, if association neuron is required, then it will be 3 neurons connected together to form the reflex arc. If there is no association node required, then it will be directly sensory to motor. As shown in figure 10.8b, after the instant response, the sensation is also carried to the brain via the interconnecting longitudinal nerve fibers, ascending neuron in the spinal cord. So yes, after the whole connection is done, then it is sent to the brain and so to the spinal cord, okay, maybe to store the data that such a thing can happen. Complex reflex action. Complex reflex action involves neuron at different levels of the spinal cord. While walking in a darker road, if you happen to step on a coiled piece of rope, you suddenly jump aside with a fear of suspected snake. Virtually all the skeletal muscles are involved in this reflex. So because you are going to jump and go to a side, so what you are doing is you are connecting the whole body to it. So it is not the reflex that हाथ touch किया हाथ निकाल दिया, ऐसा नहीं है. It is कुछ feel हुआ तो डर गया तो automatically you are kicking the complete body from one place to another body, or you are just trying to run away from that particular thing, seeing something dangerous. So that is kind of a complex reflex action. Path of reflex arc. A reflex arc may be represented as follows. Stimulus. So if a pin is there, the pin becomes a stimulus. Receptor is the same sense organ. So the skin over here becomes a sense organ. Afferent sensory fiber, nerve fibers. So that is the sensory fibers will be the afferent ones which are going to carry the impulses from the sensory to the spinal cord. Then comes the spinal cord, that is nothing but the CNS or brain also, because you have it can take place even to the eye, so upper part of the body. And from there to the effector muscle, so effector muscle, that is the motor nerve, and from there to the motor nerve, not the effector muscle, motor nerve, that is the efferent nerve or the motor nerve, and that is the going to the muscles, and there is the effector muscle, which will either contract or there will be a gland which will start secreting something. So this is a complete reflex arc. The term reflex comes from the Latin word reflexus, meaning reflected or directed back. Can you make out where from the impulse are reflected back in the reflex? So the above path can be expressed in stimulus, receptor, sensory neuron to brain or spinal cord, motor neuron to the effector muscle or gland, and the response. The various terms components in it are explained below. Reflex arc, the shortest route that can be taken by an impulse for a receptor to the effector. From the receptor to the effector, the shortest route what the reflex is going to take is the reflex arc. Receptor, the specialized epithelial cell in the contact with the terminal endings of the nerve cells which respond to stimulus and convert it into impulses in the sensory neuron. So receptor is the sensory part, the sensation, that is the sense organ which is going to take part in the taking up the stimulus and converting into impulse and sending it to the sensory neuron. The sensory neuron is on the spinal cord that receives nerve impulses through its axon terminals endings which are in contact with the receptor cells. CNS, central nervous system, spinal cord or brain. It is a region in the spinal cord or the brain where incoming sensory impulse generate an outgoing motor impulse. So whatever is the incoming sensory, that is going to the CNS, that is the spinal cord or the brain, is going to generate a corresponding motor impact or motor impulse. Outgoing motor impulse. In the center, there may be an association neuron between the sensory and the motor neuron. Motor neuron, it carries impulse generated by the association neuron in the CNS to the effector muscle or a gland. And finally, effector, it is the organ, muscle or a gland that responds to the motor nerve impulses. So that is about the different terms which are used in the reflex arc. So remember, all reflexes are involuntary, not under the control of our will, but all involuntary actions are not reflexes. So all involuntary actions are not reflexes, like breathing, it's not a reflex, okay? See, we know that all the reflexes are involuntary. We don't need to remember it, we don't need to act upon it, we don't need to think to act upon it. There's automatically a reflex that suddenly something happens and you're going to protect yourself or do something which is connected to it or which is your own learning experience. But that doesn't mean that all the involuntary actions what you do in your body are all reflexes. No, it is not so, right? Like beating of the heart is an involuntary activity, but it is not due to any reflex. Certain voluntary actions, by consciously repeating them with specific stimulus, can become involuntary, and such actions are called as conditioned reflexes. Yeah, so that is what we understood about conditioned reflex, like brake marna, cycle chalate waqt agar samne koi aa gaya to. So that is all conditional reflexes, which is actually you are doing it on your own will, but it has become a practice for you that whenever such a thing happens, it becomes a habit that you apply the brakes. So that is a kind of a conditioned reflex. Right, so this was about the nervous system, a very important chapter. Something important also, at the same time interesting also. So just go through them properly, and not much of a structural questions over here. Yeah, okay, thank you.